for this Friday, January 6th, and it will be at 1:08 p.m. Hawaii time, which is 3:08 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time. So this full moon is happening in a star called Punarvasu. Punarvasu is at the very end of sidereal Gemini, and it moves from Gemini into Cancer. This is the star that is the return of the light. After the storm that happens in the previous star, which is Ardra, we have the birth of the universal mother, Aditi. It is a star of renewal and a star of peace in many ways. We're coming back into the light, but we've been here before, right? There's a repeating quality to this star. It's repeating the patterns that we've experienced again and again and again. How many storms have we been through? How many trials and tribulations have we experienced in our life? And how many blessings have we experienced? How many returns to the light have we experienced? We come back again and again and again in this world circularly, right? And each time we arrive at this place that we feel like we've already been, we have, but we're different. We've experienced something already. We've been through all the other experiences to get us to this point. And so we are anew. And we have also the wisdom of what we've already been through. This full moon is also going to be right across from Mercury retrograde. And since it's in Gemini, and Mercury is the ruler of Gemini, we're going to see, again, that sort of quality of things repeating and past experiences coming forward, particularly as they relate to our mind and our intellect and our information and our capacity to discern that information and decide what is true and what is false. I'm going to share my screen so that we can see the chart here. And we can also see that the moon, or excuse me, that Mercury is right next to the sun. So this Mercury is retrograde and also very combust. When a planet's really close to the sun, we call it combust. And generally, a combust planet has the energy of it sort of burned up by the sun, and we can be on a short fuse with that energy. With Mercury, the energy is that of communication, of our buddhi, of our intellect, and our capacity to take in information and then disseminate it out again. Well, we all know in a retrograde Mercury cycle, we have delayed communication. Our text messages or emails get lost, or we can't come up with the right words in the right moment, or our computer stalls, or whatever we're dealing with seems to be delayed and take time. And we feel a lot of frustration around that because we live in a fast-paced world where things are supposed to get done. Words are supposed to be spoken, messages are supposed to be sent, and everything is this sort of pressure towards accomplishment. And when planets are retrograde, we aren't as accomplished. We're not as able to get things done. And that can be very frustrating, particularly with Mercury in this day and age, because we are so reliant on technology. And it does affect that. We're so, attached to our phones and our computers and our messages and our words and our ideas. In fact, most of our reality is really formed by these ideas. Gemini is the place in the sky where we are first forming our I identity. It's where we come into our ego. We leave the land of Taurus, where we're grounded and rooted in our values and our possessions and our family. And we move into this realm where we want to explore something different. And in that, we have to imagine it, right? The air quality of all the air signs brings us into a capacity to think things out. It's like the human capacity we have, where we move out of just that animal quality of either survival, of our reptilian brain, or the mammalian brain, which is connective and just wanting comfort and connection, and moving into that capacity to really make things different using our mind. So in this realm, we're being asked to revisit what we've created for both our personal identity, that ego that we've established, that I that we are so firmly rooted in, and also our perceptions of how things are. Mercury is in his opposite sign of Sagittarius, the opposite sign of Gemini, which is about beliefs. It's about what we believe. And if we remember the new moon we were just through, which was in the star of Mula at the very beginning of Sagittarius, we were uprooting those beliefs because guess what? Most of them are wrong, right? Most of them are based in our fears. They're based in stories we've been told by our parents or ancestors. They're based in stories we've been told by society or by our beliefs and teachings that we subscribe to. And they're based in projections, things that we thought were true that weren't necessarily true. So our buddhi, our intellect, is like trying to sift through that which is true and that which is not true. The star that both Mercury and the Sun are in is called Purvashada, and Purvashada is a star of discernment. It's shown by a winnowing basket where we, sort out the husk from the kernel. And that's what we're doing. We're sorting out what was just excess covering and what's the real truth. What's the grain of truth? And that's what we want to plant our seeds based on. We want to plant seeds based on real truths. Well, this is a process because again and again and again, we're going to be living in our projections. We're going to be living in these sort of, confirmation biases that we have. We're going to make decisions based on that. We're going to think things are true or not true based on that. And then we're going to find out we were wrong. And we're going to have to revisit that. And maybe instead of speaking first or knowing first, we listen and we learn and we recognize that we don't already hold the truth, that the truth is vast beyond what we personally could possibly know. I like to think of it as each of us sort of hold puzzle pieces to the truth. And when we work together, we can see a bigger picture. But when we are constantly negating what other people think or say, and no, that doesn't fit my confirmation bias, so that's not right. No, oh, that does fit my confirmation bias. That's definitely right. Give me more of that. That's really a lot of what we do, especially in today's society, because there's so much information and we largely disagree with huge swaths of the population, and then maybe have our little tribe of people that we agree with and continue to say, yes, that's what I think too. So we're not necessarily open in our mind as much as we think we are. Often people express how open-minded they are, but you can see that they're open-minded to those who think the same way as them, but not necessarily to the idea that someone else might hold some truth in their belief, because whatever the person says triggers their beliefs so much that they can't even hear past that. They can only hear that one thing. So we've lost a lot of nuance in our world. And like I was saying, this Mercury is very powerful, actually, because it is both retrograde and combust. The combustion can make us feel like we're not being heard. It can make us feel as though no one's listening to us. The retrograde can make it so that it's literally hard for us to get our words out or get our email across, and they actually are not listening to us. It's delayed communication, so we're actually genuinely not being heard. And so together, this quality creates the thing we're really trying to do, which is learn to listen, learn to learn, learn that the wisest thing we can possibly know is that we don't know anything, or that we know very little, and that we're going to have to constantly experience these different ups and downs of life to return back to the light and see clearly again. Aha, I have that moment. Aha, I've had that realization. And I guarantee we'll go back through it again and have another downfall and feel we're in the dark, and then come out again. So this is a big learning for our start of the new year. This is the first full moon of the new year. And it is an opportunity for us to really, reflect upon what we're founding our lives on. Because ultimately we found our lives, we found our values on what we believe. We found our friendships on what we believe, and our relationships. And we found our own identity on that. And it becomes a very important part of our identity. So we, one of the other things about this particular star, Punarvasu, is that of the storm of Ardra, all the things that are hard in this world were born, right? tornadoes and hurricanes and earthquakes and fires and poisonous plants and poisonous insects and violence. But also of this storm, Aditi was born, the universal mother, and she birthed the Adityas, who are these beings of light that bring us all the blessings and the capacity to move towards light, the capacity to move out of what is negative. And if we think about the fact that our mind attaches to the negative first and holds onto it longer, we can actively work to feel differently, to look at all the things that are blessings, all the gratitude we might have for our abundance, the fact that we have food to eat, the fact that we have a place to live, the fact that we have computers to use and access to technology, the fact that we have other people in our lives, and maybe even recognize that we have other people in our lives if we've been feeling more alone. This has been a very challenging end of the year, and Saturn has been moving through his final degrees of Capricorn, really nailing in those hard lessons around our solitude and our aloneness, around our concept of time and how short it is and how much pressure there is to get things done by a certain time limit, which is ultimately the time limit of our life, of our lifespan. It's brought us in touch with our humility, with that deep capacity to just drop to our knees when things become so incredibly difficult that we hit, rock bottom and have nowhere to go but up. So this is that first glimpse of light that says it will get better, or it is better. All we have to do is see it that way. All we have to do is open our eyes to all the things that are already so good. Venus has also joined Saturn. So this has brought an interesting element to these last, Saturn's moving out on the 17th. So, 17th, 18th, into Aquarius. And so these last couple weeks or, 10, 11 days that we have left of Saturn being here, we have Venus joined. And Venus is bringing our relationships into this grounded place, which is really helpful for this Mercury retrograde here. Because not only are we learning to listen and go back and say, maybe we didn't understand, maybe we didn't get that communication right, but we're also willing to be more humble in our relationships and more practical about what we expect from others. We often expect quite a lot from others. We actually expect our happiness from others. We expect them to give us happiness as if it is not something that we have to achieve on our own. And Mars is giving, not to jump around too much, but Mars is giving his drishti here to this Mercury and Sun, his one-way drishti. It's an 8th house drishti that Mars only gives, and he's retrograde also. So we're still angry, and I've been talking about this, about how other people are keeping us from our discipline. Our desire for pleasure is what's keeping us from our discipline, but we're blaming other people. Why? Because they're supposed to give us happiness. They're supposed to give us pleasure. They're supposed to give us joy. But what this is really teaching us is that we have to give it to ourselves. We need to wake up and do the things that make us feel good in ourselves, that make us feel strong in ourselves, that make us feel confident in ourselves, and that make us physically active and present in our body so that we're not channeling that energy towards anger. And from that place, we can meet other people in a humble and committed way, which is what Saturn brings us, and put in the work to have relationships that bring us genuine happiness, not happiness based on fantasy or quick shots of, passion and endorphins and feeling great, but the genuine work of humility, of really relating to another person and being willing to listen. So not only do we have Mercury retrograde, but we have Venus in Shravana, which is to listen carefully. So are we hearing what other people are saying? Are we just constantly with our own agenda? This is what I want. This is what I want out of a relationship. What, who cares what you want? This is what I want. Are you going to give it to me? If you're not going to give it to me, then I'm out. And we live in this world where there's less commitment to one another because there's also not just technology everywhere, but there's access to people everywhere, from dating apps to Facebook to all these different ways in which we can engage with other people. But none of those are actually real, true relationships. And we know if we've ever had friendships, and most of us have, that have lasted the test of time, where we've been friends with someone for a really long time. And that's come with some ups and downs, no doubt. Some people have been in relationships for a really long time, 30, 40, 50 years, and there's been a lot of downs as well as ups. What kept them there was their commitment to each other and their practical, grounded perspective on what the other person owed them, which is nothing. Nobody owes you anything, actually, and certainly not your happiness. Right? It's a mutuality of working together and deciding that the two of you can together create some form of compromise and joy in co-working whatever your relationship entails, that you have enough of the things that you want to do that are the same and enough of the same values and beliefs, perhaps, but more than anything, that you're willing to listen and hear what the other person is wanting and saying and needing. And there's a part of you willing to help them get that, and vice versa. So this can be a really powerful time for relationships. It can be a time when relationships need to come to end if there's not that level of compromise and there isn't that quality of humility and shared perspectives. But it can also be a time where amends are made because we are more humble and we are more willing to listen. And we are, able to return to that which was light as opposed to just all the hard and all that is dark. But this Mars here is still offering that little bit of anger beneath the surface. So this will go direct January 12th, which is only 6 days after this full moon. So we have, kind of the last week of Mars retrograde, and then it will start to move forward. And that forward motion can feel explosive at first. It can feel like, wow, this is all the stuff that's been bottling up inside of me. This is all that heat that I've been holding and I haven't been expressing out. But if we're wise, we'll express it outward by doing physical action, physical activity, working in the garden, dancing, doing our yoga practice or whatever physical exercise lights us up and makes us feel happy, not just the hard physical exercise that we have to do, because this is Taurus. This is where we want to enjoy things. We want to enjoy the physical material needs that we have. We want them to be beautiful. We want them to be fun. We want them to feel good. So if we're wise, we'll, dance, take baths, make love, do all those things, but do them in a responsible way where we're not making someone else give us that. We're doing it for the joy that we feel it within ourselves. And right after this moon is full, it's going to move here into Cancer, into its own sign. And that's really what Punarvasu does, is it bridges us from the mind into our heart, into our feeling nature, and our capacity to recognize that the highest truth resides in the heart. The highest truth is how we feel. And with Jupiter giving a one-way drishti, a fifth house drishti here, we can really light up with what we love. We can really feel the peace that comes when we connect to something higher than ourselves and create from that place. Actually, whether that's artistic or whether that's related to being around children, or whether that's, related to whatever your spiritual practices are, or whether it's, just being in your own heart space and really establishing for yourself that which you love and that which brings you light. So this is a really poignant full moon, despite the fact that it's got a lot of retrograde action and maybe some burbling anger beneath the surface and some amends that need to be made. It's the perfect way to really start off this new year, because we have the opportunity to, not just jump off with a bang, but to really reflect upon what did not go well, particularly the last 6 months but really 3 months of 2022 when Mars first went retrograde in October. But Mars has been sitting in this place since August 10th of 2022. So we've had a lot of time to sort of stew on what makes us feel angry when we're choosing for ourselves not to show up for ourselves, and blaming it on the other people from whom we are desiring to get pleasure from. So we have a lot that's going to shift as the new year begins. And Mars and Saturn are the first two major shifts we're going to have. Besides Mercury, being retrograde and then moving direct, we have Mars moving direct on the 12th of January and Saturn, the 17th and 18th, moving into Aquarius, where we'll have a lot more movement on what we're committed to and a lot less. Saturn still rules Aquarius, so there's still that quality of fear and time, but there's that air quality where we're able to imagine something different. We're able to get ourselves out of the mud, which is literally what happens from the earth signs to the air signs. We're pulling ourselves out of the mud into a realm where possibility becomes endless, because it's the realm of our mind. It's the realm of our imagination, and anything can be. Now we can get caught up in that as well, but it is a place where movement occurs, and we shift out of the places where we felt stuck, perhaps. So this should be a blessed full moon for all. And I'll do, of course, reports on Saturn moving into Aquarius and break it down for each of the 12 signs, because this has been a 3-year transit of Saturn and Capricorn, so a very long time, really since January of 2020. And I'll also, I don't know if I'll do a transit report on Mars. I don't often do those unless it's a really long transit like the one that we've had. But I also do have my full forecast for 2023 at this point up. So it's on my site. You can go to www.radhahomeyoga.com and check it out and see a really simple, brief explanation of all the major transits of the new year, and also a really detailed video where I go into depth with all these transits if you want to dive deep. This is an opportunity to really see, and maybe even in a way map out, what the year is going to bring and look like for you. And it's important to be able to step back and see the big picture. And it's also important to kind of dive deep into the specifics and know where you will be in 6 months or in 8 months, and what things are shifting that can really change what you're feeling or what you're doing or what your vibration is. So I hope this is helpful and you have a beautiful and blessed full moon, and also that you find those other resources helpful, and you can sign up for my email list and receive those forecasts. Really, it's usually just every 2 weeks for the full and new moon. I've been doing weekly forecasts for each of the 12 signs, so you can see where it affects you, what house it affects for you as well, and these longer transit reports, and of course the 2023 forecast as well. So have a blessed full moon, and I hope to see you again soon. Namaste. Aloha, namaste. This is Radha Home, and I'm here with our full